talk about the dance program and specifically race around it. And we're thrilled to have Hellenius and Erica with us tonight. And I wanted, if it was okay, for Amber to talk very slightly, a short introduction about the dance program, because I know she has a huge passion for it. And we'd love to hear from Amber, if you don't mind.
Yeah, because I just wanted to, I love to talk about my love for dance and just it just feels like such a community. It's always so welcoming. I love the dance program so much. And it was my first opportunity to take a dance class. I took African dance 20 years ago, and I was thinking about it, and the anti-racism work. It was my only Black professor that I had throughout my whole higher education. And I went to Loyola, New Orleans. I went to, CU, a big state school, NYU in New York City. And so the campus is such a clear leader in so many ways. And I also wanted to mention, before I forget, this article, 4 colleges committed to diversifying their dance curriculums. And I thought there's a perfect quote in here that kind of speaks to this evening. It says, "And while many colleges are now beginning this work, a few have made it a central part of their mission for years." And this is from Dance Spirit this fall 2020. But I love it. And not only the way it makes you feel, but what it does for you, I think, emotionally and psychologically, and just the wellness of your whole body. And I'm just such a big fan of our dance program and so excited to hear about the future and going forward. So thank you guys for being here.
So thank you so much, Amber, and thanks for your enthusiasm that we always get from you, and it's wonderful. It's infectious, and you help create a wonderful culture for us in arts and humanities. So generally at this time, when you introduce people, you talk about their bios, and I don't love doing that because I'd rather people introduce themselves and go straight into the information. Clearly, we have both Hellenius and Erica here because they're wonderful at what they do and great ambassadors for their program. We'd love to hear from them. Last week, Erica was on a Zoom with me, and we asked lots of different questions. But today, it's going to be sort of more that Erica and Hellenius sort of lead what they'd like to talk about. And of course, we'll make sure, I'll just come back and make sure there's questions along the way, or if there's questions at the end, we'll find time for that. So without further ado, Erica Randall, Hellenius Wilkins, we're thrilled to have you. Thanks for your kindness.
Thanks, Robert. I'll just start before I pass the mic to my dear friend and colleague, Hellenius. It really is, without question, like a family in our house. Hellenius and I have been texting and talking all day, and with Donna and Larry, and online with Anya Cloud, our new we are deeply connected and committed to the work of both teaching dance and transforming what dance education has been and what dance has been on concert stages and off the concert stage, and giving that as much validity as the things that have happened under the bright lights that have often said, this is important. It changed my life when I came to CU 14 years ago. I was so fortunate. Bud was the chair then, and I'm the chair now after his 14 years. When I came in, I had an opportunity to go to a lot of schools. I was fortunate in that time, in that moment. And I chose CU because of the humans who were here and the work that was happening. And I think Hellenius will echo that in his own story. I know in conversation that I chose the people who I knew would challenge me to become not only a better artist and educator, but a better human. And I felt that in the moments of the conversations I had with Onye Azuzu, who really is, in so many ways, the mother of this work of decolonizing the university, and with Michelle Ellsworth, who is a stunning artist and educator who many of you know or know her name. She's had full front page New York Times stories about her. She is no stranger to the spotlight of contemporary art, but where her heart really has been transformative for me is in the questioning, particularly as a white woman. What is my role in leadership? What is my role as a dancer? What is my role as a bridge connecting? And with that, I want to pass it to Hellenius to start us off in this conversation. And I am so grateful to him always for being my comrade in this conversation. Thanks, Hellenius.
Thank you, Erica. Hello to everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you and to be here tonight. I'm the associate chair of dance, and I've been here for about 5 years, and I echo many of the things that Erica just shared in terms of the sense of community, the sense of invitation to the program, and the uniqueness of it. I am certainly here because of the people who are in our house and because of the history of work that has been taking place around dismantling what has been tradition and reinventing, sort of undoing and remaking. Never in a million years I would have imagined myself being here in Colorado. I always thought I would be on the East Coast permanently, but here I am, and I'm really happy to be here. Yes, Erica like pulled me in. So I'll also add as a way of going into some of the things that have been happening within in our house. We refer to our department as a house over the past couple of years, and particularly in this current time. I would like to read a little bit of what a little bit of a reflection. So our offering tonight feels in part rooted in something that came to us as a beautiful surprise. At the start of this academic year, we were invited by Chancellor DeStefano to be featured in episode 1 of his virtual outreach series. We titled that episode "The Bridge, the Break, and Belonging." This title has morphed into an anchoring theme for keeping perspective on our past, present, and desired future while continuing in our work of decolonizing the university and imagining new futures for dance. We are deeply connected to actioning toward continued change to build a culture and environment that resembles our aspirations. Our current anti-racist work efforts in the program emerge from a 15+ year commitment to undoing and remaking. Undoing and remaking that is made visible in our inclusive faculty makeup, the diverse and highly regarded national and international accomplishments of our faculty, even in our current pandemic reality, the post-collegiate achievements of our students, our programming, and our ongoing in-house activities that hold us accountable to remaining diligent in our work and not complacent. This academic year, I co-developed and curated the Radical Reimagining series, a 5-part series per semester that transforms our Friday town halls into sessions centering collaboration, listening, and practicing. The inspiration for this was in part from an open letter received by students this past summer. The goal of our Radical Reimagining series is to create a space for faculty and students to engage in the work together as a practice, a way of becoming, versus an exercise to fulfill a requirement. This, my friends, is one of the ways we create a sense of belonging. We come together and recognize everyone as being a contributing member of the fabric of our community. We further expand our sense of belonging and community by inviting outside individuals, non-department members, to participate in our conversations and help us permeate many lanes within our house and across campus. We're presently thrilled and looking forward to our 4th fall semester session centering allyship that will collaboratively be led by our colleague Donna Mejia, who's an associate professor of dance, with CHA Director Jennifer Ho. Understanding how we experience and create space for belonging requires considering the bridge and the break. So to hear a little more about this, I turn it back over to our department chair and someone who I call my co-conspirator, Erica.
Thanks, Hellenius. It was a huge moment for me when I was given the language of being a co-conspirator versus an ally. To be an ally is to stand by and to watch another do the work. To be a co-conspirator is to put your hand at the back of that person in the line of fire. And it is, I had no idea that I would be so deeply enriched in areas around race, culture, intersectionality when I took this job, when I came here. And I feel that presently as an administrator, my role is as the bridge. That is my place to cause good trouble. How I show up in meetings with deans, as I point to my friend Bud, who is our dean and is also one of our family members in theater and dance. How we show up with the provost or with the chancellor. How we how we not only rock the boat, but rebuild it and reimagine the oceans that we're on. And when we get to the land, say, okay, here, now, let's do this. How, especially as a white person, do I learn when to be quiet, which is hard for me as an external processor, and give way to those who have been doing this work for a long time, those in our community who we see as the break. Yeah, the break comes from this idea in hip hop. For those of you who are maybe not familiar with the term, Kool Herc in the Bronx spinning the piece of music that made the b-boys and b-girls get up to dance was known as the break, right? And we think about this when we look at what our department has done. Keep spinning what's working, keep it moving, keep interjecting the thing that disrupts the narrative of the song, of the verse, chorus. Hip hop has done that for us with Rennie Harris, who many of you may know for his incredible work. Since hip hop hit the concert stage, Rennie's name has been out there. Through Larry Southall, a b-boy from the Bronx who did his master's with us, was a longtime adjunct and now is an instructor. And they run a hip hop certificate on campus that's interdisciplinary and examines the intersectionality and complexity of hip hop as a way of knowing, particularly around race and class and identity. When we think about Nyarma Soa, who not only took African dance, the form, but created worlds of African culture, and we have more students who come to us through that class, engineers, business majors, they think, oh, it's an easy class. There's a break there in the knowing that the body as text holds infinite information and that the spine of that text does not need to remain rigid in order to be read. It has to be supple. It has to find syncopation and flow and complexity. So when we think about this work, maybe Hellenius, you can help me. There was a really beautiful writer who in all of the conversation after the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, who was saying, we don't all show up the same way. You know, we've talked about this, Hellenius. We show up in different ways. Can you remind me?
I try to remember. Was
that was
tied to Resma in some way?
Everything connects to Resma Menakem in some ways. We're obsessed. Thank you, Hellenius. If you don't, I'm sure Hellenius will talk about Resma's work. But this idea that we all show up, we can't show up in the same lane. We have to show up in different lanes. So for me, as a white woman who has privilege to be in a leadership role in a university in Colorado, I see myself as the bridge, this thing that can make connections, that knows what my faculty and students are up to or is willing to learn and can help get that out in curriculum, in press, in events like this, in meetings like the Council of Dance Administrators, where I have attended for a long time alongside Onye and Michelle, and before Neda Diachenko and before, to impact other universities and share out this work, where I have colleagues like Hellenius, whose work has always been based in belonging, of identity, of self, creating community, and then other artists who are at the front lines in different ways, pushing at things, looking to break forms in order to breathe new life and possibility into the world. So it's really important, and I think one of the reasons why dance has been successful is that we all have different ways of approaching this work. Hellenius?
I would agree with you on that. And it's that kind of saturation that makes all the difference and continues to bring it back home that art matters, and art is integral to every aspect of our lives, from building to rebuilding to healing, to feeling a sense of belonging, to translating, even in many ways, the things that we can't put into language. That dance is at the heart of it, arts is at the heart of it. So there's a thing about being human, that it is not only a thing to practice or a thing to do, but it is actually the way of being. It is our way of being. It is our existence.
And to add to that, before we just pause for a moment to take any questions or hear thoughts, really sense I arrived 14 years ago, but before that, these conversations and these hard talks about identity, race, privilege, the implication of one's body in a space and one's that's not there, which studios allow shoes, which says that fancy new studio is only for bare feet, which means modern, which means white privilege, or do we let that new studio be the space that disrupts and says, no, that floor has got to be good for hip hop and for shoes and for drums and for African, and ballet shoes can go someplace else. Like really looking at how we see space. These conversations have been in every meeting, every curricular conversation. Tears have been shed. There has the meetings in the bathroom before the meetings in the bathroom after the meetings, because if you know dancers, we're in the bathroom together. We're like at the stall, we're getting changed, we're talking. I mean, you're never not meeting. And if you're never not meeting, then you're always trying to meet one another. And that's been crucial for us, because this work is not a bunch of boxes that you can check. That's a list. That's not the work of decolonizing. And it takes a long time. And I think that time can be frustrating, especially for students, because faculty are here. Students are in and out. Grad students in MFA land 3 years, undergrads 4, maybe 5 with a double major. So students can come in with all this passion and frustration and not always see the work behind and the work to come, because it takes so much time on so many levels, interpersonally, personally, administratively. And in this present moment, the call to action is quick. And so how do we navigate those things? So I think as an introduction, we're happy to answer anything and to talk about anything, but it would be great to hear from all of you whose names I know so many of you with thank you notes. So I just love you, and I'm grateful for you, and it's really nice to see your faces.
Thank you both so much, and we'll continue to chat. So if there are questions, or for example, are there terms that people aren't familiar with? The notion of decolonization, what does that mean? What does that mean to different people? Despite my British accent, I don't know too much about it, having had immigrant parents. But any questions? No question is foolish. We would be thrilled to hear you and sort of make this more of a discussion. And one omission, you did mention Bud Coleman, and please forgive me when Bud came in. Bud has been a very close friend to our team, as now we're thrilled to have him as the associate dean in arts and humanities. So thank you. And he has very long days, so he's very kind to be here. So feel free to jump in with questions. We'd be thrilled to hear from everyone.
We really love the questions. We are obsessed with continuing to question. So yeah, Terry.
Talk about decolonization, because I want to hear from your perspective and what that means and what that looks like and how it's reflected in your students and your faculty, like where you see the sort of reverberations of that.
Thanks, Terry. Helene, do you want me to start on that?
Sure.
Okay, I just want to talk about a third university as possible. If anyone doesn't know this book, yeah, I see Anthony's read it. Sarah, you should have that on your list. I basically rewrote that book in this little notebook because I love it so much. It's La Paperson is the pen name of the author who wrote it, but it talks about this infiltration of a system and working at a systems level to create a third university, not one, I can say, okay, let me just read this because it's so good. Okay, with decolonizing dreamers, we are subversively part of the machinery and part the machine itself. New puppy. The subversive beings wreck, scavenge, retool, and reassemble the colonizing university into decolonizing contraptions. They are cyborgs with a decolonizing desire. You might choose to be one of them, this book says. So there's this like beautiful kind of poetic about, first, the awareness that universities, particularly Research One universities, were based off of land grants. And in our case, on the lands of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho territories. So already colonizing the land towards a particular goal of learning. And then the notion of an institution, a university, colonizing the way learning is acquired and transferred has been very, has been created based around systems that privilege white history as a frame for beginning to step in to knowing that is not often named or called out, right? And this is when I wish Paul Sutter wasn't watering and could give us even more around these ideas. But what it's meant for us in dance, I can jump to, Terry, and in theater, is that a colonized body is one that is watched and seen in that kind of Foucaultian way where you're constantly trying to shape yourself in the image of. And the image of has been defined particularly by, in dance, on the concert stage, white, Western, vertical Christian ideology that is subverted when you change your alignment, intellectual alignment or spinal alignment, whether it's through African dance or hip hop, taking in forms that maybe would ultimately sit outside of the kind of ivory tower of the academic world that has particular kind of Western leanings in dance, and bringing them into the university starts to make space for new ways of meaning making and new knowledge and new prioritization of bodies and questions and rhythms. And it starts to kind of collapse ideas about truth that can come from language that has held this inherency that actually needs to be debated. And when we do that on a body level, ideas about technique, like, do you have good technique? How many turns and how high does your leg go? Those are Western European ideologies. But if they're not valued when in hip hop, if you go in the cypher and that's what you bring, people are like, that's whack. That's like, first of all, that's not improvisation. That's not your idea. That's not innovation. And that's vertical, uptight, dead. An erect spine is a dead spine in African dance. Yeah. So how we start to bring in ideas that sit in counterpoint to the things that kind of built and were foundational. Now, it was a miracle that dance even got into the academy. And we think about what Charlotte York Irie did to get dance out of phys ed and to let art be a discipline and to let creative work be research. All of that had a decolonizing principle around it, but it still referred back and forward to a kind of more white, capitalist, hegemonic, straight, Europeanist aesthetic. And so to get in there and even just name that and talk about it in history classes and composition and technique starts to pull at the fabric of how we think we should behave, which is how we are colonized as bodies. So that's how some framework for dance, and we offer that up to our students, which means they also give us trouble constantly and remind us where we are reinscribing colonizing principles in our practices of auditions or show choices or and grading, other attention to rubrics. So anyway, I want to throw it out. I don't know, Paul came back on because I feel like he wants to say something about this because that makes me excited. And then maybe Hellenius, but Paul, do you want to add?
I don't want to add a ton. I just think, in the discipline of history, a lot of it is around questions of whose narrative, whose experience, whose story, whose archives, and what does it mean to be, for so many years, our discipline of history was dominated by formal archives in which only a small segment of the population, the wealthy, the powerful, dictated the story. And that has been a profoundly powerful and frequently oppressive reality. And so that's within my discipline. But I think, I know history is a discipline, but history is also a way of knowing and being, and that's very much alive in theater and dance as well. And I think that's a critical part of it. How did my understanding, rudimentary, is, how did cultural forms like dance come into being? How did certain forms become high culture and other forms become low culture? How do we to decolonize is to essentially challenge those narratives of hierarchy, and make sure we understand why they're there, whether they're legitimate or not. Often they're not. I'll shut up there.
No, it's perfect, Paul. Thank you. I so appreciate you, and I have loved the way that dance has been seen by my colleagues like Paul and others as a really richly, we talk about embodied text, but it for reals is in dance land. And this notion of honoring the living text, the libraries of story and information that comes from reading the body, which is what we do in dance. We read the bodies and we read the dances, and it has such great possibility then for making space if the bodies are there and if they're welcome and they're invited into the rooms. I would say at CU that it has been more often than not recently when if folks say, oh, where are you? What's your unit? What are you chair of? Dance. Oh, fun. I'm getting less, oh, that's fun, and more, thank you. What a challenge. What a gift. How fulfilling. What a rich way to do, that it's, people are starting to shift around it. And so thanks to Paul and others who have helped even understand this notion of high-low discipline, which can happen at a university all the time, and dance certainly, and theater as well. But anything in the body. Hellenius?
I will just add about the physical space. So there's all this beautiful context you just provided for us, which I experience every day in the department and being a part of the house. But our house is also built to have these conversations in a physical sense. And that was actually one of my inspirations for coming, because in most programs, they are ballet focused as the dominant, or modern focused as the dominant. And this was the first program I came in where hierarchy was sort of squashed and all of the forms had a seat at the table to have a conversation. And that the conversation was about if we are truly training and if we are truly thinking and leaning into the work, with each area being an important form and having a language and having an archives, that when you move into another form, you can take that information with you and have some way to begin to engage that next form. And so what I often say is that we build multilingual dancers and multilingual beings because they're moving through forms not as a practice of steps and experiences, but they're moving into forms as a way of understanding culture and histories and understanding the why. Not just what it is, but the why of it. And I think that's what makes us super unique. And that is one of the ways in which we deal with decolonizing, because we are decentralizing a singular voice and we're saying all the voices are in conversation.
Can I ask a follow-up question to Hellenius, if I may? That notion, Hellenius, of African-American dancers or choreographers having, in a sense, to behave in a Eurocentric way. I remember there was an interview years ago in the New York Times with Ralph Lemon, and he said, yeah, I didn't realize, I'm a black man from Minneapolis, but I was really Eurocentric in my dance initially, and he evolved. So is that a problem for people of color in dance? So they were, in a sense, felt like they had to behave in a certain way, and hopefully that's changing.
That's a fantastic question. I actually don't see that as a problem, in the sense that when you come into something, without previous information, you wouldn't know if something is a problem or if something is not right. And so over the course of time, with more information, we start to find ways of interrupting our patterns of thinking about things. I would say that my background is very similar in that I was brought up through pretty much the Western canon of dances, and that was my primary training. However, as I evolved and as I gained more information and as I started to say, wait, hold up, what about? And why aren't we also engaging and talking about these other forms that are part of my world, and why am I not seeing them in the classroom setting or in the university setting? Then I started to embrace my history in a way that allowed me to understand that it is relevant, it is part of the conversation, and there is a way to shift the notions about what is technique and how to language my experience. And so, but that's also not, I don't negate my training, right? I am where I am because of that training, but as my colleague Erica just mentioned earlier, I cause good trouble, right? So I bring in ritual to my training practices when I'm making. I bring in the ongoingness. I bring in curvilineity. I bring in so many other elements of rooting and shifting and changing that interrupts the notion of the vertical, the notion of the proper, the notion of set steps being the answer to technique or proper technique. So I think we all meet a mark, or maybe meet a point where we feel courageous and have brave spaces to like reclaim our histories and our stories and understand that they have place, and that we then start to interrupt all the ways in which we learn what was our form.
Thank you so much. Anyone else that might have a question, please let me know. The last person who needs to monopolize this is me, so feel free. I don't have the good fortune to know everyone in this call. I've had the good fortune to meet Pat from Seattle. And Pat, I don't know if you want to say hello or not, but you were a geography major, but you involved very heavily in dance in the late 50s at CU, and presumably you've seen a lot of changes over the year in the way that dance has been performed and dance is perceived. But if you're comfortable commenting, if not, we understand completely, but we're thrilled to have you here.
Yes, I came to CU in 1954, and I'd already had training in ballet and modern, and so I didn't actually take classes from Charlotte. She had a dance group, a small one that I think was called Orchesis at that time, and so we always put on 1 or 2 programs a year, and she had some original choreography, which was just great. And we also traveled around to different small towns in the state of Colorado with the music department, and we put on musicals like we did Brigadoon, and I can't think of some of the other ones. But Charlotte was always so enthusiastic, and I guess I feel very fortunate that I'm one of the few people that's showing up here on the screen that actually knew it. And what you're doing now is just a wonderful continuation of what dance should be.
Pat, thank you so much. I only got to meet Charlotte one time. She came to my improvisation class, and it was the day my mom was there, and my mom was taking photographs, and it was such a gift. And I had these gorgeous pictures of Charlotte, and I got to dance at her memorial service that we had. And the folks who were there said, "Oh, you danced in the spirit of Charlotte." I was really trying to channel. I was in this red dress, and I was in this, very in this of the 1950s modern dance, which I love. I was raised so much in that. So thank you for sharing, Pat. It's really nice to meet you and to know that you're still a part of the continuation of her work by being with us. It's such a joy. I think one of the things that Charlotte did that many colleagues say is that Charlotte always knew how to bring the right next person into the house and into the community. And from Mama Tish, who started our African program, who then, brought on the dance company Harembe, which Donna Mahia, who's now a professor with us, danced in as an undergrad with Larry Southall, who now is an instructor with us. And then bringing it, Niar Masowa coming in, and Onia Zuzu coming in as a tenure track role so she was the first African dance-based tenure track position. I'm right with that, Bud? And so, this thing about it not just being about the forms, but about the human. Who is the human? Who are the humans who will come into this house without ego, but with passion and at the same time, a desire to teach? We all really love teaching. And I look at Anthony, who was a student and is now a colleague. And Anthony came in a way of, Anthony, you can give me the sign if I share too much, but not fully knowing himself, right? And we see this with a lot of our students, like Black students, queer students, students, who come in and they have this idea about dancing. I think dancers, we've trained to be dancers, and then you start to feel yourself, which you do in college or in grad school. And we've had so many incredible Black students who have been like, I didn't understand my Blackness and how it is transforming the Western ways that I have danced in ballet and modern. Or we had a student, Pat, to your major, who was geography and dance, a double major, Hattie, and they also became to understand their notions of being a writer and a thinker and a theorist with regards to the body and how it maps. With Anthony, I think, Anthony comes with a visual arts background, sculpture, Anthony, mess is more, right? That the more you could bring in, and then how do you find yourself in this mess of things? And I don't know, Anthony, if you just want to talk about what it was like to find yourself in our house, because I think that has been true for so many students because of the human experience of the weave and the weft of people that can hold that space for difference. Anthony?
Sure. Yeah. I don't even know where to start. I mean, CU, especially the theater and dance department, have such a big place in my heart. And I've worked at 4 different universities. I've done residencies everywhere. I have colleagues now that have worked other places, and truly there's no place like CU. Like, I just talked to Jessica Pearson, who was an MFA grad, and Christina Galletti. I brought them into a company series class, and they were just like, there's literally no place like CU. Now there are professors at other places, and Christina is chair in Texas. I can't remember which university, but and yeah, oh my gosh, I think, Erica, you said actually when I graduated, you were like, you were such a brat. And I was like, you were totally right. I really was. But it was really because of Onye and Erica and Nada and Niarma and Larry, and getting to work with Rennie for 4 years. They really challenged me in my queerness. And no one had ever let me do that before. It was just something that was like, oh, you're queer, but be quiet about it. And at CU, I really got to thrive and find my voice and find my place in that. And Michelle, oh my gosh, how can I forget Michelle? Yeah. And I'm really thankful for my time and everybody there. Yeah.
And in advancement, we're also big fans of Anthony, as you know. So is it okay if we, and this is a very, very slight departure, and if not, you just tell me, is it okay, you talk about the spine, you talk about the body, is it okay to talk a little bit about disabilities and dancing with disabilities, and what does that mean? Is that an okay subject to touch on?
Absolutely. I just wish that our alum, Bailey Anderson, were here. Bailey, for those of you who may know Bailey, I was a first reader on her MFA project, and she wanted to work on disability and dance. And it was something that I had only been familiar with in the obvious ways. The obvious ways meaning dance companies based in wheelchairs or work on crutches, things that were the visual disabilities that positioned companies in kind of a category of other. Not as integrated. And what Bailey did in her research for me and continues to push me on is this understanding of ableness. So getting rid of the disability, but talking about ableness and able bodies. And she had gotten a grant to do work at the New York Public Library around Graham and disability and invisible disabilities, Martha Graham, and mania and ADD. And I mean, she was looking into like, how could Graham have made this work without disability? And just kind of pulling back at the notion that all disabilities with regards to dance are visible, or we wouldn't see them performed. And what is it like to actually look at bodies all from a place of difference? And because dance in a Western canonic way has had a very specific example of what a body might and should be, that anybody differently abled starts to fit in this category of disability studies in dance. And so it just like kind of explodes. And it also then gives agency to bodies that don't dance the way we think we should on a concert stage, and this idea of high art, low art. How do we continue to adapt our curriculums for those students who, and so many of our students do, have access to disability services, but they aren't in a wheelchair. They don't look physically disabled, but they have challenges that do not permit them learning in the same modalities that dance has often come to expect, like be quiet in class. Start there. Either learn by watching or just learn by doing, or learn by touch. What if for the students who learning by touch is an absolute no-go in their ability practice? So I don't know, Robert, if that answers your questions, but there's a lot of work that's happening in the area of disability studies in dance, and it's really how we look at what bodies are permitted, again, into spaces, what bodies are welcomed. And I know from my old experiences at the jail yard school, I had to weigh in every Friday, and there was a particular way to look, and that was an extreme. But we continue and have continued these body colonizing practices for a long time, and that's another layer, and it's very new in the dance field of study, I would say. Does anyone want to add to that? Any of my friends?
It's a great answer. And it sort of led back a little bit. And again, feel free, anyone to chime in anytime, raise your hand, feel free. But it sort of that goes back to that notion of, from an old fashioned notion of ballet, one doesn't really associate that, for example, with an afro, with free hair, with, that's something I'm sure that hair is even a problem, I assume, in
we only just got point shoes that weren't pink this year. It's like, that dancers had to dye their own shoes or wear pink tights over their skin to wear the pink skin body to go with the pink shoe. I mean, just that's crazy sauce that point shoe companies just started making shoes to be the color of different skin types.
And Louise, you came off mute. Is there a question you'd like to ask? We'd be thrilled to hear from you.
Well, just so I'm a fan of the dance program from within the environmental design program. Just one thing, and then I had a larger question to ask. It struck me when you were talking, Erica. I mean, weren't the dancers in Russia traditionally serfs? And so, I mean, all of the decolonizing is right there in those relationships. But my question was that I've been going to dance performances for many years, and I came here in 2006, and I've seen a shift in the last few years, which I don't know if it just reflects what's going on in our larger society, but I'm just curious about it, of dances where students were kind of telling their feelings, telling their story, to suddenly celebrating political activism and political history. And I wondered, how you see that entering the dance program, where you see that suddenly coming from, because certainly political history has been around for a long time, and so has activism. And I was just curious that just in the last few years, I'm seeing it on stage, and it's so exciting.
I can start, but then I'd love, Hellenius, for you to jump in. We have had a really incredible technical director, Ian Court, who has made room for our artists to change the proscenium space. There's something that happens when you dance in a box and you communicate with a fourth wall, or through a fourth wall, that kind of asks to be presentational. And when you can start to imagine worlds that maybe penetrate beyond that and have more potential for intimate connection, or if an artist has an interest in doing dance that asks hard questions and gives good trouble, do you have the technical resources to support it? And Ian and his incredible team of doctors, usually students, in transforming this irie black box from a more proscenium space into a more gallery space, or a runway like it would be in a voguing ball, or in installation-based work, which you've been seeing, I think, a lot lately, Louise. That's something that has become really interesting, these vignettes and these pockets so that people can get up close and get into the detail of the body and the personal story. That has come from a yes of technology and of support that doesn't often get noticed. Again, it's that systemic change. The what can we say instead of no, your show must fit in a box. Well, that's colonizing, yeah. And if you can bust open the proscenium, what can you bust open in your own way of thinking about what dance and the body can do? So I would say Ian is a big part to that yes anding that has transformed things. Hellenius?
I would also add that Ian is amazing. Just that thought. But I would also add that it's maybe the undercurrent in a lot of what we do around constantly asking what is dance and constantly giving ourselves permission to redefine it. I think that's part of it. I think another part of it is if dance is about the humanness of everything and of our being and of who we are, then we are complex beings who have multiple layers. And all of those layers can be sources of inspiration. And so the political and the social is bound to come out. And there is a world, a massive world where a lot of work is being done through the bridging of art and social justice. And so the work, in that case, the art in that case is in service of those larger questions and is wanting to create brave and courageous spaces to invite folks from different backgrounds or different perspectives and viewpoints on these big issues to have conversation, to be inspired to see themselves, see a reflection of themselves on the stage spaces. So there is that world that also we invite, and I think being in a Research One institution, asking those questions and having our students think very differently about how they even arrive at making is creating spaces for them to think about all of these various things. And then how does that then come into play in the making of work? And then what is the space for that work?
Also, I thought of another notion that if people don't particularly want to talk out loud, feel free to send questions in the chat before we finish. We've got about 8 minutes left. But Louise, thank you so much for asking, and thank you for the wonderful answers. While people are thinking of those questions, maybe Hellenius or Erica, is it okay if you also mention what sort of student dance events people can look forward to, perhaps, you know, during this time of COVID where they can't see too much? Are there things going on that people can, perhaps could look in on in a different way?
I'll give that one to Hellenius because he is my supreme calendar schedule production superstar of organizing this wild season as our associate chair. That has been such a strength of his. And then I see you, Micah. I see that hand. I see that hand. So we'll go to you. But Hellenius has been planning some incredible events. So you share them, Hellenius.
This is so great to catch me on the spot like that.
I was trying to vamp for you so you could Google your dates. How'd I do?
I wasn't thinking that fast.
I was trying. I can go longer. I mean, Hellenius and I, we're like a show. We could do this all night.
So yes, we have wonderful events coming up throughout the year. We are a house where we are supporting many MFA projects, as a matter of fact. But one of our biggest events that we're really looking forward to, and that's next on our books, is Unwrap. Unwrap stands for Undoing Reading, Writing, and Performance. So I had to take a second to get it. And this particular year, it's the title or the theme of it is Remaking, Undoing and Remaking. And we have a powerhouse team of international guests that will be in our house working with our students, offering various panel discussions on creating new futures for dance. They will also be providing master classes, but to the general public, we invite you to come to the culminating performance. The full week is a symposium, and that's November 8th through the 15th. I'm remembering that correct. It's a Sunday to a Sunday. And that last weekend, will be a curated performance taking place that is sponsored by CU Presents. It's CU Presents Digital. So you will be able to, it's a gated event. You'll be able to buy a ticket and see the performance by several, I think 7 artists are involved in this work, in this performance. And then there will also be a pre-performance talk on the opening night, that Friday performance, which I don't know that date, but Erica might know that. She might be putting it all in the chat for you, which would be really awesome. Thank you so much, you're great. Also, to kick off on November 8th, that Sunday, we're doing a pre-informal coffee chat with students and some of our guests that is open to the public. That is taking place at 4:30 on that Sunday afternoon. And included among our guests is our Roser Guest artist, which is our big artist who comes in annually to set works on our students and spends usually about 2 weeks teaching master classes, creating brand new work, and imparting our knowledge on us. This year's Roser Guest artist is Jumatatu M. Poe, who is actually also a Creative Capital Award winner. We have 3 Creative Capital Award winners as part of Unwrap, which is a significant award in the field of dance. So we're super excited about that. So that would be the next big event. So there's this informal conversation, and it's a weekend of performances that you can most certainly see. And then following that, closing the semester, will be an informal concert that is called Fresh. And Fresh is a space that we allow our students an opportunity to experiment, to let their imagination run wild, and to test new ideas. And that will be also presented through CU Digital. And so I think that's happening like the first week of December, but Erica might be putting the exact date in the chat, which I'm so grateful to you for that. And so that's also curated. And you get to see a lot of what the students are exploring and developing. Thank you, Erica, for your assistance with all of this. They're like magic. We are truly co-conspirators.
Micah, you were going to say something.
You know, I was going to open up a can of worms, so I'll close that for now. But I do want to say that, just to echo, I think the students are so lucky to have a place that they can be themselves. You all always are opening the door to experiment, to learning, and to just fly. And not every organization or university or school or the people you come up with production-wise, you don't always get to do that. And you allow them to fly, fall, whatever it is, the gamut to experience. And I just want to thank you. You see it in the work. They're able to show themselves and show that, you know, be themselves on stage. And that's a gift. So thank you. Keep doing that great work and getting it out there to as many people as you can. Thank you.
Thanks, Micah. We appreciate you. We genuinely love the students that we have who are with us, and the communities that they build and how they teach us. It's really astounding, and we can always do better by them and for them. And they're also open to the call and the charge of reimagining what it is that they want from dance and from us. And that's been a gift too, that we do ask them to engage and participate. Yeah, we are students for life. That's us as artists, Hellenius, that's right. And so we're all in it together. We take each other's classes. Hellenius will teach and I'm in there taking his class. And I don't know what other disciplines do that on campus on the regular. Besides hang out in the bathroom, we take class from each other. And it is a true gift to be with your students in class, sweating and struggling and problem solving. Every year I teach grad choreo, I do the assignments alongside my students. And it's terrifying. And they give me feedback. We go through the same processes. So there's something about that intimacy, I think, Micah, that we are able to bridge with one another to do that interpersonal and personal work. And then, and that allows for spaces to do this hard work, even when we're not doing it well, when we're failing, there's room. Yeah.
I want to be a little cognizant of time because I know we're sort of about to wrap up. And obviously people can stay on and chat as long as they would like. But is it okay if you, love to hear from you if it's okay. I know you've had a long day of chatting to people, but just sort of what the programs mean to you. You've been here a little while and we'd love to hear your experience if that's okay.
Oh, yes. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the first of Humanities at Home. So thanks to Robert and Amber and Mike and everybody else on Christine's team. We really appreciate and hope you'll join us for the other Wednesdays this month. Very quickly, I started as a theater major a million years ago, but then took dance. And as Erica was describing, the very regimented ballet world, and wasn't quite weighing in every Friday, but yeah, the tyranny of the body was alive and real. And so to see the change in the pedagogy and performance, I never, if you'd asked me about this 20 years ago, I would have said, oh, no way. No, that is never going to happen, especially at a university. They're so rigid. And to see the work happen here, and as Erica said, it wasn't always pretty. Change is hard. Sometimes surgery, there's a lot of blood and things take a while to heal. But we knew all the way that this was the right thing to do. And so I agree. I've taught at other universities, and CU's home, because these are people who are asking the hard questions and are ready for the hard answers. And it's such an honor to be here.
Thank you. Again, if people want to, I want to be cognizant, especially of Bud and Hellenius and Eric and everyone's time, Anthony, everyone who's teaching. But we're thrilled. If it's okay, before I mention the events we have upcoming, all the team has been wonderful, but Chris Herrera-Odell has really been the one who's kept us organized and sent out invitations. And when we send, so thank you so much, Chris. And when we send thank yous, wonderful Michelle Gafka's suggestion, we'll obviously include all the wonderful links that Hellenius mentioned and Erica kindly scribed, that we'll make sure that people know about this, because as you can guess, we'd love to support theatre and dance, and we're delighted to be participating with you to a very small degree. Any questions, any last minute things people would like about? And we're thrilled to have you here. So next week, and Terry is here from New York City, from Brooklyn, and next week, Terry is going to be one of the speakers together with Eric Richards, her husband, who's again a carpenter at the Metropolitan Opera, and will tell us what happens to the sets. Where do they go? Do they use them again? Do they get scrapped? Well, these are things we don't know about. And then the wonderful and kind Marcus Henry, who worked in New York City also and has a costume background amongst lots of experience in theatre, will also be there. Terry has taught. Terry was a Royal Green Scholar. Terry, you can tell us for 2 seconds how exciting it's going to be if you'd like, but we're thrilled to hear from you. We're thrilled that you're here tonight too to support us.
I'll be talking enough next week, but I'm so happy Erica, to see you, and Hellenius to meet you, and Micah to see you, Bud to see you. It's really wonderful. Pat, I just wanted to do a little shout out. When I was at CU and I went as a dance major, Charlotte was still there, so I know Charlotte. And so it's a wonderful lineage to be a part of. I'm really thrilled to see how the department is evolving through these different, I'm going to say voices and different moments in our history that collide and bring together this wonderful kind of decolonization, just to use our word. And I look forward to talking with you all next week, but thank you all so much. I really loved this conversation.
And obviously no shock when when I asked Terry if she would like to be involved, she jumped at it and said, of course I'll be involved. I'll do whatever you need me to do. So thank you. We look forward to Terry next week. Feel free to RSVP for that. Thank you, Erica, for mentioning that the kind people like Pat and others and Anthony who give to the program, many other people here. So thank you so much for supporting the program. It's wonderful. We're fortunate to have you. If it's okay, well, if you want to stay on, Mike and I and Michelle and Amber and Chris are not going anywhere. We'd be thrilled to stay, but answer any questions. But Elenius, thank you so much. Erica, thank you so much. Bud, Anthony, coming on from.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
First of many. So let's keep highlighting humanities and the arts, and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Be well, be well.
Pat, so good to see you.
Thank you, Erica.
Thanks, Micah. Such a treat. Bye, Anthony. Thank you.
So nice to see you.
Oh, nice to see you.
Good, good.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you for being on.
Thank you, Erica.
Bye, all.
Clark. Miss Clark. Hello. Hello. Oh, how wonderful. It's always such a treasure to hear them talk about their craft and the creation of art. You can feel it almost.
No, they're lovely, passionate people. It's a very interesting thing. Everyone, there's sort of even on when we're looking on Zoom, there's a kindness that emanates from the dance program. And Bud has it too, and the Terrors, the actors of the world in the theater side too. I suppose you sort of expect it, but there's a very sort of a warmth about it. And it's interesting that Paul Sutter is on, because he has that sort of menschy sweetness about him too. He's a good guy.
Does. He does. Oh, good.
I think it's interesting they refer to it as a house because it's such a family, so that they refer to it as their house, and the care that they feel for their students and dancers is so
palatable
and welcoming. It's
and Mary was on the phone, and Francis has been kind on the phone, and Mary also in the background. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Yes.
So, again.
Well, I've got to feed my little 8-year-old. She's watched too much TV today. Darn it. She'll be a bear, but I'll get some reading time now.
Guys,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for the hard work.
Good
as well.
night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone, and thank you. Let me know if you need anything.
Thank you, Mary.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and go ahead and end the session.